So this is Josh Mandel, and I wanted to do a quick update on where we are with smart health links and show you a set of demos that I've been working on. But just as a quick reminder, the goal with smart health links is to build on the work that we've done with health cards. And health cards provide a way to share small amounts of healthcare data by letting somebody scan a QR code. And in that case, all of the relevant data is included as part of that QR code. Which is very powerful, but also has some limitations. And in particular, there's only a limited amount of data that you can fit in a QR code. That's one challenge. And also, you can only fit a static set of data in a QR code. The code itself, maybe you print it on a piece of paper, but it's always going to say the same thing. It can't change. So with smart health links, we want to address some of those limitations. We want to provide a way to share data sets that could be quite big, as well as a way to share data sets that can evolve over time. So maybe I want to share a feed of my most recent immunizations or my most recent lab tests in a way that anybody that I share the feed with can maintain access to that feed over time. And the demos I'm going to show today address one of these use cases, which is sharing a complete vaccination history, and that it could be a dynamic vaccination history because people continue to receive new doses of vaccines over time. And all the demos that I show are going to be based on this sketch that's called the Oauth method in the current write-up. So this is design sketch number 1. And I'm not going to go into too much of the technical details around the Oauth method in this demo, but I'll show you a peek under the hood so you can get a sense of what's happening in line. Let me just dive in first with this site demo.vax.link. And the idea here is this is a site that might represent a parent's patient portal account or a portal account at a state immunization registry where this child, Oliver Brown, has his entire life history of immunizations stored. Now, I'll say this represents maybe the best case where all of your immunizations are in one system, but smart health links also provide a good way to bring together data that start from multiple different systems. We can talk about that on a subsequent video. But to start, this represents a kid who's 5 years old, and he's received 23 vaccinations over the course of his life, which is about the minimum number that you can have to be up to date with all the various recommendations and requirements. And this is not a very beautiful rendering of the immunization history, but under the hood, each one of these rows in the list here corresponds to a single smart health card that's been signed by some trusted authority, and it includes information about what vaccine was given, when it was given, and where it was given. And we won't spend too much time on the details of these data, but that's just a quick orientation to the underlying data set that we'll be working with. It's designed to be kind of a realistically sized immunization history for a school-aged kid. Now, the interesting part of the demo happens under this tab called Health Links. And the idea here is that I might have a pile of data that's stored in this app or stored in this state registry, but I want to be able to share relevant subsets for particular purposes. So maybe I want to share a set of my school vaccines. And so to do it, I can create a new link associated with this school vaccines data set. And I can assign a pin to it if I want to, although for this demo, pins aren't really enabled, so it doesn't matter much whether I turn this on or not. That's work in progress. And similarly, I can assign an expiration date, so I can say this link is going to last for a month, and after that it's going to stop working. So there's a few kinds of controls that we have envisioned in the spec. But then basically what happens is this notion of school vaccines is currently bound to this set of 23 records that are going to be shared. But of course, this could grow over time. And so next month, somebody following this link may have access to more data. So what happens here? Now my school vaccines section has a new smart health link added to it, and I can display that as a QR code if I want and allow somebody to scan that code. Although for the purposes of this demo, I might just click the copy to clipboard button, which is going to take exactly the contents of this QR, which is a web link, smart health link, and put them on my clipboard. This repo, by the way, has the underlying source for all the demos I'm going to show today. That's the vax.link repo in my personal GitHub for the moment. But what I wanted to do is paste this smart health link into the URL bar here. And as a quick reminder, smart health links have two parts. Every smart health link will have this component starting with shl:/, and this is sort of the main content of the link. And an application that knows how to read smart health links can just resolve this directly. So if you have an application that's got support for smart health links, this is all you need. But we found that it's also quite useful to include a prefix which is some URL for a useful viewing application that could help people who aren't using some kind of a dedicated app that knows about smart health links. So this is a really easy on-ramp. And an example I'm going to show you here, the generic viewer that I've built just fetches, or connects to the smart health link, fetches all the data that's available through that smart health link, and displays it on the screen. So in this case, you can see there's a patient here, which is Oliver Brown, born on January 4th, 2017. Of course, these are all fictional data. And then every FHIR resource from all of the health cards that we retrieved from this link, so all 23 health cards, are represented here under this Details tab. You can see I've done a very careful UX design job here of just turning every resource into a pre-formatted text block and sticking a bullet point in front of it. But of course, once you've got the data here, a viewer could do anything and everything that it needs to make these information easy to browse and quite accessible. So I'll leave that as an exercise to the reader. But I did want to show you a couple things under the hood to give you a sense of how this actually works. So under the hood, this application, I'm just going to do a view source here in the web browser. This application uses a couple of open source libraries to make its job easy. It uses a Smart Health Links resolver library, and it uses a Smart Health Cards decoder library. And with those two components, the job of actually fetching and decoding the data is quite straightforward. So I won't go into all of the detail, but this whole app fits in about 50 lines of JavaScript, and the heart of it is all happening right here. So this is the core of the logic here. We've got this Smart Health link here in a variable coming from this text box, and we can say create a new connection by calling the connect function of the Smart Health Links library. And that's going to register an OAuth client using this Smart Health link as kind of the authorization header for that registration call. And that client is going to be associated with a public key that can be used to then pull data. Conveniently enough, we can do that with the shl.pull function. So once we've established the connection, we can use that connection to pull data, which in this case is a set of Smart Health Cards JSON files. And then once we've got that set of Smart Health Cards JSON files, we can call the Smart Health Card decoder function on that to verify each one in the set. So ultimately what this is doing is registering an OAuth client, pulling out a list of 23 Smart Health Card files, and then verifying all 23 of those. And then you can see it's just iterating over the set of these things, over the set of all the FHIR resources inside, and turning each one into a pre-rendered text block. And yes, there's plenty of opportunity here for cross-site scripting vulnerabilities because I'm not doing this using a proper library. Good thing is it's easy to read and easy to understand what's going on here. That was really my goal in this demo. The other thing I wanted to show you just very briefly is under the hood, what's happening here over the network when we make those library calls. So let me open up the network tab and then just reload this page. A bunch of things are happening. But very briefly, when the page first loads, it pulls in those two libraries that I mentioned. So there's a JavaScript library that is the Smart Health Links resolver, and a JavaScript library that is the Smart Health Card decoder. So that's just pulling in dependencies from the script tags. And then the interesting stuff happens when we call that connect function. That becomes a call to the Oauth Register Api. And when we call the Oauth Register API, we actually use the Smart Health link itself as an authorization header that says we're authorized to register a client to access this Smart Health link. And we pass in as content here an OAuth dynamic client registration payload, which is basically just to say we pass in our public key. And when we do that, we are assigned a client ID, and that means we've registered a client to access this Smart Health link. And then immediately after registering that client, we turn around and say, can I have an access token, please? And we do that using the Smart Backend Services specification. I won't go into the details, but you prove possession of your public key or the private key associated with that. And what you get back is an access token response. So we're going to get this access token that we can use to actually fetch all the Smart Health Card files, as well as the authorization details. This is a manifest of all the Smart Health Cards that we're allowed to retrieve associated with this Smart Health link. And so currently there's 23 of those cards, 0 indexed. So number 22 is the 23rd item in this list, and each of these is a location that we can fetch. And so after that, you're going to see a whole list of individual data fetches. And of course, we could do this more efficiently, but the aim here was simplicity to start. So each of these requests you'll see is just done using an OAuth bearer token for the access request, which is the token that we got in that previous step. And we make 23 of those calls, and we get back each one of these is a Smart Health Card JSON file containing a GWS assertion. So there's a look under the hood at what's going on in this generic viewer application. And you can start to get a sense for how various kinds of tools could actually integrate support for smart health links. And to try to make that a little bit more concrete, I want to show you, one example of what that kind of integration into more specific tools could look like, rather than just having these generic kinds of viewers. And so here, I'm going to show you kind of a low fidelity mock-up, but with actual real code behind it. It's just not a very convincing tool, but you can imagine that a school nurse might use a spreadsheet like this to keep track of students' immunization statuses. And every time a new student comes into the school, they might get another row added to this spreadsheet, keeping track of all the different diseases they've been immunized against. And so using smart health links, the idea here is there should be some workflow to say, well, Oliver Brown from last year seemed like he was behind on his immunizations, but since we're using smart health links, we can just click the refresh button here to pull a new data set associated with Oliver Brown's smart health link. And here we've got not a generic viewer, but a highly customized viewer that understands the job of this school nurse and has implemented exactly the clinical decision support algorithms that are needed in this particular school district to keep track of whether a student has received the right number of doses of vaccines. So in this case, we're doing counts of doses by grouping the smart health cards based on the diseases they immunize against. And this is not a production-grade clinical decision support tool by any means. What's happening under the hood is what I might call a poor man's CDS, which is we take every CVX code that exists in my demo, we map it to a list of the diseases that it can help immunize against. So you can see, for example, for the DTaP immunizations, this comes as part of a few different products that Oliver has received over the course of his life, because there's various ways to combine doses to achieve a schedule of vaccine administrations with the fewest possible jabs. But the important thing here is to know that there have been, let's see, in this case, 5 doses of some vaccine that included a DTaP protection. So this count, is just designed as a stand-in for some sophisticated understanding of the data from the underlying smart health cards. And so the school nurse might review these dose counts and say, yeah, I want to save those to the spreadsheet. And by saving them to the spreadsheet, well, that's always the fun of a demo. What's supposed to happen here, I'm just going to try that one more time, is that the row in the spreadsheet is supposed to be updated. Now oh yes, I see. Well, that's good. Doesn't help when Google does down during the demo. Okay, everything's back online now. That was fun. In theory then, once you are ready to save these dose counts back to the spreadsheet, you can hit save, and you get an updated spreadsheet row, something like that. And under the hood, I showed you a moment ago, we're using the same smart health cards libraries, that same smart health links resolver, and the same smart health cards decoder in order to build this app. But instead of having a generic viewer here, there's one deeply integrated into the workflow. So that's about the level of demo I wanted to show today. There's plenty of work in progress here, but it's been fun to start actually implementing, and I would love to get feedback on either the specs or some of the demos or underlying tooling or libraries that I've shown here. And with that, I will sign off.